The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. In an odd way, it's as though Prime Minister Mark Carney has borrowed a card from President Donald Trump when he pushed through Bill C-5. He's done it quicker and with greater certainty than that of the U.S. President. In fact, the Prime Minister conceived of the bill on June the 6th, and 20 days later it passed the House and the Senate. That's light years faster than the U.S. President's passing of the big, beautiful bill. Bill C-5 has been framed as a national plan to remove federal barriers to interprovincial trade and improve labor mobility. Radha Curpen of McMillan LLP says Bill 5 also sends a signal that Canada is open for business. It is a bill designed to improve efficiencies in approval processes. The big question is, will it also respect indigenous rights? I invited Radha Curpen of McMillan LLP to join me for a conversation that matters about the upsides and the concerns about Bill C-5. Radha, welcome.
Thank you very much.
First of all, let's get your take on Bill C-5. Do you think that this is a good move by the Prime Minister and that it will be beneficial to Canada as a whole?
I do. I actually do. I think it's a great first step. There's a lot of barriers to be dismantled. It is a great first step to do so. And yes, he's done it quickly. And it's good because Canada has this reputation of being too slow.
Well, we've had a reputation of being closed for business, not just too slow, but just don't even bother.
Yes, we did. And I think this bill will go a long way towards showing that we are open for business.
What do you think is the most important element? Is it just the intent or getting down into the specifics?
I think its implementation is going to be very important. And I have faith that there's the right intentions behind it with the federal government, but also with many other rights holders and stakeholders.
You know, at first I was confused, like, why was he doing this? And there was talk of pipelines, and I'm thinking, are we talking another pipeline coming to British Columbia? Because initially I heard Premier Eby saying there's no new pipelines coming into British Columbia. He's since changed his tune on that. But it also appears to me that there is this move to say, no, we're going to build pipelines that go east as well. And there have been significant interprovincial barriers to doing just that in the past.
Yes, I had been involved in the one going east in the past. I was involved with, and it is in the public domain, with Irving Oil when there was a joint venture with what was then TransCanada, TC Energy, to build east. So I'm very aware of the barriers that were faced.
Well, and what the economic upside of that, though, to Canada, to be able to move oil from Alberta all the way out to New Brunswick to where Irving Oil is, those benefits would have been substantial.
Extremely outstanding, substantial, that we have lost, but let's look forward now and see what we can do.
I can't also help but think that you remember shortly after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, Germany immediately realized that their national energy security was now at risk.
Yes.
And the German Chancellor came to Canada and tried to encourage then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to sell LNG to Germany, which
yes.
Our Prime Minister said no. And partly maybe he understood that he wasn't in a position or didn't have the authority to push through a pipeline, such as a natural gas pipeline that could get gas to the East Coast.
It was a missed opportunity, I would say. And but hopefully with this new law, we have the sort of the infrastructure that we're building in order to make it efficient. Then the question is, what else do we need to do in order to achieve the objectives we want?
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So there's a couple elements into this, and like reading it, like it states right up front that it is to remove federally mandated interprovincial barriers. I'm slightly confused about that, because wouldn't that be the responsibility of the provinces to remove those barriers, or is there a whole other level of barriers that prevent interprovincial trade that the federal government has sole jurisdiction over?
Well, we are a federation, so as a result, we have a lot of laws and a lot of regulations at all levels of government. So the barriers exist at all levels, federal, provincial, and municipal, and so we need to ensure that they all come down.
And I guess because of the overarching authority of the federal government, they're able to make that happen. One of the other components in there that didn't seem to be in the title, but it was about removing what they called accumulated regulatory or process requirements.
Yeah.
And this has been a big challenge.
It has. So the way it has always worked with the Impact Assessment Act, well, I shouldn't say always, Impact Assessment Act is not that old. Before that, there was environmental assessment under various laws. So the current one, the one before Bill C-5, was and for projects that are of not in the national interest, you still have to go through an environmental impact assessment process. And the Supreme Court of Canada told us that it has to be within federal areas of jurisdiction as opposed to all areas. So let's assume that that's what we're going to have, or that's what we intend to have. And then, so there's, for all projects that are not in the national interest, there is the Impact Assessment Act. There is as well provincial environmental assessment. And some, depending on the projects, you are also going to have indigenous-led assessment. So there's a lot of various environmental assessment before you can get to a decision. And the problem is, but people are talking about the discretion within Bill C-5. There's already discretion that's been there all the time. You've had the discretion of cabinet to, I'm talking federally, to make a decision after people have invested money and time and effort into a process, and then they can then make a decision in the public interest whether to proceed or not with a project. This bill would take away that by making it sort of one unique place, one unique minister who gives recommendation to cabinet on making a project of national interest, and not having sort of the process and the gathering of information over time, over 10 years or something like that, in order to then make a decision about a project. So the decision is being made at the front as opposed to at the back, but there's discretion already.
What do you envision is the amount of time saving to go from concept through to approval as a result of this? Because you were just talking about there would be an indigenous assessment, there would be a provincial assessment, there would be a federal assessment, and then even still would have to get to ministerial approval for these big projects. And as you said, sometimes that can take a decade. What do you envision will be timelines now that we could be expecting?
Well, it sounds like we want a timeline that would be within 2 years. That's sort of where we're going in terms of the goal. We'll see how it is implemented. It has to be implemented in a way that builds trust as well and make sure that it is inclusive in addition to being efficient. And so the implementation, the legacy of this law will depend a lot on not what the law says, but how it's done and how people can trust it. I'm talking about Indigenous peoples, Canadians as a whole, investors, business. Then that has to happen.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I couldn't help but think about going back to the Silcotin decision. And within that decision, of course, is the right of the Crown to, in the interest of like the nation or national interest, to then have the authority that supersedes all else. And because that's in the Silcoteen decision, I'm wondering whether or not the wording in the Bill C-5 addresses that by saying in the national interest. But is this because First Nations weren't brought in to consult on this, especially when we talk about the speed which the bill went from conception through to being passed, is this a legitimate concern from First Nations that they're going, hang on a second, we know that in the Silcoteen decision you can move a project through the way that Site C, for instance, was finally given approval based on national interest, and that it's going to supersede our right to be not only consulted, but to grant consent.
I think it's important to understand the context within which people have expectations, right? And different people with different experiences have different expectations. So I would say there are legitimate questions as to what kind of consultation is there going to be, and that is going to be critical. That there is proper consultation, but we've gone beyond consultation accommodation in the way we do things in Canada. There's no question Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982, the case law under that says that we have to have consultation accommodation. We've gone a bit beyond that by talk about the implementation of UNDRIP, United Nations Declarations of the Rights of Indigenous People. And by talking about let's find a way to govern in cooperation. And I know there are certain people will look at it differently. They would talk about consent, free and informed consent, right? And so there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of fears. There's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of sort of good intentions as well around all of this. So that is what's happening, and at the same time, we see this law that's been accelerated, and but we have to remember that there are two things: there's discretion, but there's also some guardrails. It has to be in the economic interest. It has to be looked at in the question of security, indigenous issues, climate. All of that has to be taken into account. So those are the type of guardrails that we're seeing. So yes, there are environmental groups raising issues. There are indigenous peoples raising issues. That's why I say it's going to really be important in terms of the law doesn't tell you thou shalt do co-governance or thou shalt do this, but what it's creating is the efficiency, the inclusion will come in its implementation. And that's where we need to get it right. Because if you don't get it right, it will be a great loss. But if we get it right, it could be a great transformation for our country.
You may recall a number of years I did a conversation with you about earning or acquiring social license. Yes. How important is the acquiring of social license, even though we've got an expedited process?
Yes.
How important is that going to be in saying, yes, this is a project that falls within this mandate and we're going to move forward? But there still has to be this approval process that at least gains social license.
Yes. I think it's going to be very important because right now people are saying we're used to rigor, we're used to gathering of information, like too much, frankly, gathering information to the point that we can't even make a decision. I think what's going to be important, we have to get the risk, we have to get the rights, we have to get the results right. So we have to make sure what the government is trying to do is de-risk right? De-risk it for investors, but we also have to de-risk it for all other, like rights holders and stakeholders. There are ways to do that. There are ways to that. We have examples of that. Frankly, there are examples of some kind of co-management from the 1990s in Quebec. I was involved in one, and then, but that was voluntary. But then there's opportunities to do different type of co-management. We see Cedar LNG, which is a great model and a great example of, you know, equity ownership and looking at environmental issues and sort of co-governance on a project. So there are many conversations to be had, conversations that matter on all those topics, but also actions, not just conversations, actions. We need to continue to move forward. We can't stand still.
You brought up an interesting point about de-risk, and I wonder whether or not, coupled with that is, do we move away from the idea of the federal government or a provincial government being like the primary funder, to say, no, your role is actually to de-risk and to invite the private sector in. And so then, therefore, then what role do P3s play? One, in funding projects, but two, also ensuring that there's inclusion.
Yeah. I think there's a great role for P3 and as well. So personally, I don't think government should own this. I think it should de-risk it for investments, for private investments, but also you can't expect. That's where the trust me thing comes along. Is that you can't expect investors who've been burned and who've been shy, who've seen how things have worked in Canada, to simply say, "Oh, we're ready to jump in." We have to show them the way to do that, and so there are opportunities for P3. There are opportunities for partnerships at various levels, and importantly, there's a great opportunity for equity participation and governance with Indigenous communities.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So you talk about, partners that have been burned in the past. Like, you think about the investment dollars that went into the pipeline project that you were representing going east. I also think about the amount of investment money that went into the proposed Enbridge line from Edmonton out to Kitimat. Mm-hmm. We're talking billions of dollars that went to no.
Yes, that's right.
And so, how do you then get that message out that was then, this is now, trust us? Because in some ways, there are some people who are going, Bill C-5 is the trust me bill. So where do we go?
I think it's a first step. You have the infrastructure, like the law, to make it happen. And it's showing the promise of efficiency. It cannot be at the cost of inclusion. So it has to be done properly. So I think you can do both. One doesn't exclude the other. I think you have to do both. And this is a great first step that then bring people together, communities together, businesses together, and governments, all going in the same direction about trying to make it happen, but knowing that to make it happen, we have to go through certain things. And we cannot just ignore the fact that those things that we have to go through, we have to go through them in order to make it happen together. So, so it is going to be important to have efficiency and inclusion.
So we've talked primarily about energy at this point, but I can't help but think about what the potential benefit of this might be in helping us to close our infrastructure deficit, because
Absolutely.
We have a tremendous deficit in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have aspirations as a country. As governments have aspirations at various levels of governments. The people have aspirations. But in order to fulfill them, we need the proper infrastructure, ports, roads, pipelines, electricity, transmission lines. all of that. So all of that require the big picture, and then actually the national interest narrative is important. So which we're having right now, and which is, by the way, caused by this Bill C-5. So it is important, because one of the things that we've seen is a fragmentation. You've seen projects being looked at sort of locally, regionally, and all of that. It has to be looked at more sort of on a national basis as well, because you have to know what the vision is, what you're trying to achieve, and then to look at that with this, and that where you bring in indigenous communities as well as a partner in all this, so that we can build it together.
Recently, we had a panel about the energy trilemma, and one of the interesting statistics that came out of it was the number of energy projects that have been proposed,
Yes.
but never got built.
Yes.
And as a result, we are on a collision course with days per year of not enough energy.
Yeah.
Will Bill C-5, like coming back to the issue of P3s, will that actually create an opportunity where those infrastructure projects, especially around energy production, namely electricity, which we definitely need if we want to be moving towards a green economy, will Bill C-5 play an important role in helping us to be able to fill that gap?
Well, it should, and absolutely, that's what I believe in. That it will do that. It not in itself, in and by itself. It has to be implemented properly. There has to be the right intentions. There have to be the right other dismantling of other barriers. I also believe that we need to look at our regulatory framework, not just for projects in the national interest. There has to be proper regulatory framework for other projects as well, to allow them to happen, to support what is happening, what we're trying to do. But let's walk, let's do it in various steps, and let's boldly do it.
Well, coming back to my opening bit about Donald Trump, he's actually given us a wake-up call, because if we don't do this and we rely solely on what has been our trading patterns for the last 70 plus years, we're in trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's important to diversification of our trade partners, diversification. When we talk about energy, we need to do everything. Diversification, it's not transition.
Well, how it rolls out will matter significantly. Let's hope that it's done responsibly.
Yes.
Thanks for coming and giving us a bit of an insight into what Bill C-5 can do for this country.
Thank you, and as always, it's such a pleasure to answer your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.